All right, hi everyone, welcome back. Um, Time for section 2-3 here. 2-3 is a lot longer than 2-2 and 2-1, of course. So I went ahead and separated the videos. Okay, so 2-3 deals with the equations of a line. So we're kind of taking a step back here to linear, and we're really looking at diving a little bit deeper into linear. Okay, so equations of a line. I guess I should put equations of a line. I'm speaking, but not writing the words I'm talking. So equations of a line. So couple things before we look at equations of a line. There's a couple formulas, or I guess forms of equations we need to look at. So the first being ax plus by equals c. That is called standard form. And unfortunately, in math, in Algebra 1, a lot of equations are written in this form. This form really, I don't think is practical. The form that you're going to really look at the most is going to be slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And that's probably the one that you remember. So as far as these forms, they are directly interchangeable. So you could go from standard form to slope-intercept form, and you can go from slope-intercept form to standard form. Okay, so couple things. We are definitely going to do that. But at first, I kind of want to jump out there and talk about intercepts, and I want to talk about slope, so you can kind of see. Okay, so if you are finding x and y intercepts, standard form is the easiest way to do that. Okay, so if I ask you to find an x and y intercept, and I have two examples here, standard form is probably the easiest way to go here. Okay, and we'll talk about how to find them here in a second. So when you find x and y intercepts, when you're finding the x-intercept, y is equal to 0, and solve for x. Basically, I always tell students, you're finding x. If you want an x-intercept, you're finding an x value right here. Okay, y is 0, and you want to find your x. So let's go ahead and jump over here. And, well, let's do the y-intercept first. And y-intercept is just the complete opposite. You let x equal 0, and you solve for y. And you're going to see that later on in a couple lessons as well. So don't forget that. Okay, so let's go over here. And in order to find the x-intercept, we need to let y equal 0. So it ends up being 4x plus 3 times 0 equals 12. Guys, 3 times 0 is just 0. So you end up with just 4x equals 12. Divide by 4, you get x equals 3. Now keep in mind the x and the y intercepts are points. Okay, these guys are points. So when you find them, they are a point. It's not just x equals 3. I didn't solve an equation. I actually found an intercept. I let y equal 0 and x was 3. So likewise, the y-intercept here, the x is equal to 0. So 4 times 0 plus 3y equals 12. And likewise, that goes away. You end up with 3y equals 12. If you divide by 3, you get y equals 4. Now, it's not just y equals 4. We found an intercept. 0 was x, and 4 was y. And you have successfully found now the x and the y intercept for that problem. That is definitely easier to do in standard form. Okay? So that's one of the benefits of standard form, I think, is to find x and y intercepts. Now, as far as slope-intercept form is really good for finding slope and a y-intercept. And I caution you, it is just a y-intercept. Okay? So, If I take a look at the example, y equals 5x minus 4, okay? And it's literally just like that. You basically have no work to do here. 5 is your slope, or your m. Sometimes it is called mx plus b. And negative 4 is your b, which is also your y-intercept. Hence why it's called slope-intercept form. Okay? So in this case, m is 5, and the y-intercept is 0 comma negative 4, and you should keep the negative there if the b would happen to be negative. Okay, so there's benefits of both forms. I do think the x and y intercepts are easier if it's in standard, and if you have to find a slope or if you have to find a y-intercept, it's a lot easier in slope-intercept form. So it's an important skill, I think, to be able to go back and forth between the two forms. So that's what we're going to take this next slide and we're going to do. All right, so let me draw a line here down the center here. And on the left-hand side, we are going to convert from standard to slope-intercept. Oops. So we're going to convert. Oh my goodness gracious, I'm drawing lines now. Sorry, let's have the line tool checked. Convert from standard to slope-intercept. Okay. All right, so couple things. Let's do, I have two examples here. So 4x plus 3y equals 12. And notice example 2, we're going to do 3x minus 2y equals 6. Now, you guys could find the x and y intercepts of this. I should be able to give you a problem, and you should be able to do that. But we're not going to go ahead and do that here. We're just going to go ahead and look at the converting. All right, so obviously it's in standard. It says ax plus by equals c. So it's in that form. So when I convert to slope-intercept, the first thing you need to do is move the x term to the other side of the equal sign. And when you do that, the x term becomes negative. So it's almost like subtracting 4x from both sides. So you're literally just putting it over there. And I always put it in front of my number, okay? So on this one, your negative 2y stays, and when the 3x goes over, it does become negative 3x. Okay, so the first step is to move the x term over. Okay, so if I had to write that down, it is going to be move the x term. So you remember what I did. Okay, the second step is going to just be divide by whatever's with y. And you have to remember to divide the entire equation. So negative 4/3 x, and then that becomes 4. The 4 and the thirds doesn't divide, so we're just going to go ahead and keep it. And voila, that's it. And you are now at slope-intercept form. So on the second one, I'm going to go ahead and divide them both by negative 2. Something happens here. Negative divided by negative does turn positive, and you should do that. Okay, and 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. Okay, so the second step is going to be just to divide. Okay, and that will take you straight to slope-intercept form. Now I can look at both of those equations, and I can find the slope, negative 4/3 or 3/2, and I can find the y-intercept very easy, 4 for the first one and negative 3 for the second. Okay. I think that right there is the more important skill, and that's why I have this one first. Okay, so converting from standard to slope. Okay, now going the other way, there's a couple times where it's useful. Not much, but I am asking that you know how to do it. So convert from slope-intercept now to standard. So we're going vice versa. We're going the other way. So when I convert from slope-intercept to the standard, all right, so I got 3 examples here. So I think it's a little bit more challenging. Okay. Example 2. Here's my arrows again. Ever since I touched the arrow, it is making a bunch of arrows. Oh my goodness gracious. Example 2 is y equals negative, oh no, not negative. I'm going to do positive 5x. These arrows are going to be the death of me. Wow. And the last one is y equals negative 3/4 x plus 1. Okay. All right, so they're now in slope-intercept form, and we have to go to standard. So recall that standard form has the x and the y part on the same side. So when I go to standard, the first thing you want to do is now take the x part that's on the right-hand side, and you want to put it back on the left. And when you do that, it does become positive. Okay, so once I do that, guys, am I done on that example? The 2x is over there, so it's in the form ax plus by equals c. And it is in that form. So it is just move the 2x to the other side, or move the x part to the other side. However, let's take a look at example 2. When you move the x part here to the other side, you're going to notice something. The x is negative. Okay? If I go back to standard form, the a cannot be negative. Okay? So a has to be positive. Furthermore, a, b, and c cannot be fractions. Okay? So there are no fractions in standard form. Okay? So a, b, and c cannot be fractions. Okay, so going over here, then what do I do with this negative 5 if it's stuck being negative? Simple step, you can multiply the entire equation by negative 1. And if you do that, you end up with 5x minus y equals 4. Don't forget to multiply every single term along the line. Okay, and lastly, example 3 has another little curveball in it. If I take my x part and I put it on the other side, it becomes positive 3/4 x plus y equals 1. Okay, so it turned positive, so we're good. But I have a fraction now. I am not allowed to have fractions. So instead of multiplying by negative 1, we are now going to multiply the entire equation by 4. And if you multiply the 3/4 x by 4, the 4's will cross cancel, and you are just left with 3x. Then you have 4y, and 1 times 4 is 4. Simple, simple multiplication to get rid of negatives out in front for the x term, and also how to get rid of a fraction. You can just multiply by the denominator. Okay? Okay, so I do have a couple of those on the quiz where you will have to convert from standard to slope-intercept and vice versa, slope-intercept to standard, because I do think that's an important skill to have. Because again, all the ones over here in blue are real easy to find x and y intercepts. All the ones here in the red are very easy to find slope and the y-intercept at least. Okay, so as far as that, that's kind of the idea. We're going to see a little bit more of that later because we will have to convert to find some things. Okay, so the next thing in the chapter that you'll have to be able to do is find the slope between 2 points, or find the slope of the line connecting 2 points. And there is a formula for this, guys, the slope formula. It is y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. You might know slope as rise over run, and that's why the y is on top, because the y-axis does rise. Okay, so technically it is rise over run. All right, so example, find the slope if you have 2 points. So let's do -3, -5, and let's do 4, 1. All right, so typically what you would do, x1, y1, this is x2, y2, and we're just going to go ahead and do our formula. The slope is equal to y2 minus y1, which is a negative 5. So be very careful there. 4 minus a negative 3. Anytime you have double minuses in math class, that's plus. So 1 plus 5 on the top, 4 plus 3 in the bottom. That ends up being 6/7. Okay? And again, guys, that is a positive slope. So your slope would go up 6 over 7. So that'd be your rise and then your run. Couple things can happen when you find slope. If you end up with 0 over any number, that slope ends up being 0. If you end up with a number divided by 0, in math we cannot divide by 0, so that slope is considered to be undefined. Okay, so those are the two weird things could happen. I do have a neat way to remember that. A teacher in my high school here, she has on her board, it's okay to have the 0 up top, but it's a big no solution to have the 0 on the bottom. I thought that was kind of neat. So, but as far as that, those are the two weird things that could happen when you find slope. Okay? All right. With that said, it's time to go to the big part with the writing equations of lines. All right. The next formula. The right point slope form. I'll write the formula, I guess. Used to write equations of lines. Okay, usually this is the form people use to write equations of lines. Okay, there's other ways to do it. However, this is the formula or the form that I use to write equations of lines because I think it's fairly, it's pretty easy. A lot less fractions, so we'll see a couple fractions today. When it's in this form, it's a little easier to handle the fractions, in my opinion. All right, so point slope form. In order to use this form, you must have a point and a slope. Okay? If you have a point and a slope, then you can write an equation of a line. Okay, so you have to have those two things in order to use this form. So let's just look at a basic example of using the form, and then we're going to go into all the different types. Okay, so what if I know that the slope is 4 and a point on the line is -1, -3? What is the equation of the line? Okay, so the equation of the line, it is not inherently easy, guys. You can't just kind of throw numbers places. You do have to do a little bit of math. So m is 4, and your 1 point is considered x1, y1. So when I plug this in, it's y minus the y term, which is -3, equals the m parenthesis x minus the x term, which is -1. You have two double negatives here, so those both turn plus. Now here's the reason I like this form. It's 2 steps to the answer. The first step is distribute 4x plus 4. And the second step is to solve for y. So subtract 3 from both sides. And you end up y equals 4x plus 1. Voila, there's the equation. And it is in slope-intercept form. Now, a couple slides ago, I just talked to you about converting that thing to standard form. So technically, you should be able to convert that to standard now as well. Okay, and that would involve moving the 4x to the other side and then dividing by your -1. Okay, so the next couple slides are all writing equations of lines. And I got different examples for you each time. All right. So the directions will tell you what to do on this. So the first example, I'm going to call this A because I have A through E on this one. So far as A is, write an equation. And the key here is if given a M and a B. So you are going to be given a slope and a y-intercept. Okay? That right here tells you how to think. If you are given an M and a B, guys, you just use y equals mx plus b and substitute. That's it. So my example is going to be, write an equation of a line if the slope is 3/4 and the y-intercept is 0, -2. And keep in mind that's your b right there, and that's your m right there. So the equation is y equals m, 3/4 x, and then the b happens to be negative. If that was positive, it would just be +2. And you're done. Okay? You just use y equals mx plus b. You make the substitution for m. You make the substitution for b, and you have your equation. And again, that equation is in slope-intercept form. Technically, you should be able to convert that to standard if I wanted you to. Okay? Second kind is how to write an equation if given a point and a slope. Okay? So keep in mind the point is going to be an x and a y form, and the slope is going to be an m, okay, because slope is m. So keep in mind this is your slope back here too, and your b is 0, comma, something. Okay, so if I have a point and a slope, what do? You use y minus y1, and this is the formula we just looked at. You are using point slope. Okay, so an example is going to look like this. What if the slope is 4 and the point is -6, -4? Okay, so as far as that, we're going to use the formula. So y minus the y over here, which is -4, equals the slope, which is 4, parenthesis x minus x1, or the point of the x. So again, I could label these x1, y1 over there. Typically, that's what you do. Okay, so again, you have some double negatives here, so turn those positive, and you end up with 4x plus 24 on the right once you distribute, and then all we have to do is subtract 4 from both sides, and we end up with y equals 4x plus 20. And there is your equation of your line. Okay? Of course, I keep saying this, but you could convert that to standard, and you should be able to do that. All right. Next one. I'm going to use a whole slide for this one. Write an equation of a line. And I called this C, by the way. Did I call the last one B over there? I don't even remember. Yes, I did. Write an equation of the line that passes through 2 points. Now, so you're going to have two things like this, and you have to write an equation of a line. How do I do that? First, you have to find slope, and you're going to have to do that by doing the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Then you will have to use point slope to actually write the equation. This one has 2 steps, so you will have to find the actual slope first. Okay, so let's look at the example here. We're going to go ahead and do the points Write an equation for negative 3, 3, and 2 comma negative 7. Okay, so typically what you would do if you have 2 points, you would label them x1, y1, because that's point number 1, x2, y2, because that's point number 2. So the first step is to find slope, or m. So negative 7 minus 3 all over 2 minus negative 3. That ends up being, oh no, why did I just do that? Thinking of the bottom. Negative 7 minus 3 is negative 10. The bottom becomes plus plus, so 2 plus 3 is 5. So negative 10 divided by 5 is negative 2. So now that I found the slope and now that I have my m, I can go ahead and use point slope. So y minus y1, which is 3, right here, the y1. And negative 2 is the m. X minus the x1, which is 3. Plus plus. Don't forget to distribute first. So negative times positive now will be negative 6. Once you distribute, then you just solve for y. Add 3 to both sides. You end up with y equals negative 2x minus 3. And there is the equation. Okay? Again, that's in slope-intercept. If I wanted you to convert that to standard, you should easily be able to move that 2x to the other side. All right. And then the last 2 examples here are writing equations of lines. One more time. Letter D and letter E is writing an equation that is parallel to another line. And the other one is writing an equation that is perpendicular to another line. Okay, so in both of these cases, what do? So I have to write an equation, and all I have is a line, okay? And you are going to be given a point as well. So I guess I should write that down too. You're also given a point. Okay. However, something's going to be missing, and that thing is called slope. So what we have to do first, we have to rewrite the line in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b form, to find m. Okay? Once you find the m, does anybody remember about the slopes of parallel lines? The slopes of parallel lines are completely the same. Okay, so we're going to talk about that here in a second. Same thing over here. You have to rewrite in y equals mx plus b form to find m. However, over here, the slopes are not the same. They are opposite reciprocals of each other. Okay, so we're going to have to do something here. Same slope. And over here is going to be opposite reciprocal. And we'll talk about that here very shortly. Okay. Once you do that, then you are going to use point slope. So use y minus y1, and you're going to write your equation. Okay, in both cases. All right, so let's look at some examples here. The first example is going to be write an equation. Remember, our directions are always write an equation. It's going to be through the point negative 2, 5, and parallel to 3x minus 6y equals 4. Okay, So the first step is to take the equation 3x minus 6y equals 4. And I have to find the slope of that. So I'm going to have to move the x to the other side. So once I move the x to the other side, I go ahead and I make it negative. After that, you divide everything by -6, and this is what we did at the beginning of class, or beginning of this video. Negative divided by negative is positive. 3/6 does reduce to 1/2, and the other fraction is -2/3. Which one of those numbers is m? So if I pause right now, you all should tell me that m is 1/2. Because it's parallel, we are using that exact same m in my problem to write my line. Now the second step is to do the y minus y1. So y minus 5, same m that I found, x minus -2. And guys, your point is up above. 1/2 times x, 1/2 times 2 is 1. And instead of -5, you are adding 5 to both sides. You end up with y equals 1/2 x plus 6. All right, perpendicular. Example. It's going to go through the point 6, -4. And we want it perpendicular now to 3x plus 4. Now, sometimes, guys, it's real easy to find slope. In this case, it's not because my line is written in standard form. So I can't readily just find the slope. I have to rewrite it here. So I'll move the 3x to the other side. You get -3x minus 8. And if you divide everything by 4, you end up with y equals -3/4 x minus 2. Okay, so which one of those numbers is my slope? -3/4. However, since it says perpendicular, you are not using -3/4. We have to use the opposite reciprocal. So that, guys, instead of negative, it is positive, and a reciprocal in math is to flip that fraction. So it has to be 4/3. Once you have that, then you can do y minus the y equals now the slope 4/3 times x minus 6. Distribute 4/3. First time you had to distribute a fraction. 4/3 times x is 4/3. 4/3 times -6 is -8. Subtract 4 from both sides. You end up with y equals 4/3 x minus 12. Voila. Okay, a little bit more detailed, which is why that is the last part of this section. Okay, that was a long video. I'm probably going to cut it off here, and then I am going to put a third video up that will describe the test process. Okay, so what is on the test, I'll go over the outline, and I'll actually tell you the format that we are going to administer this test through. So the third video will be test information, so please make sure you watch that video. Couple things in this chapter, please make sure you are ready for this test. Make sure you go through each of the quizzes and you watch each of the videos and have all your notes available. Okay, guys, so be sure to watch the third video. That does it for chapter 2. I will put the quiz on there as well, even though it's not due for 2 weeks. I suggest you do look at it before the test, and if you want to submit it early, that is a-okay. Okay, so I'll see you for the third video.